Well, at the moment, the interim government headed by Professor Muhammad Yunus is running into a lot of trouble, a lot of problems with the Army Chief General Waqar-u-Zaman, who actually, after the ouster of PM Hassina's government, put in place this very interim government, and he justified it by the doctrine of necessity. He said there is no government in place, this is not how a country can run. India-Bangladesh relation much depends on the regime which is in power there.
Absolutely.
If we have Awami League, we have a friendly regime, things go hunky-dory. If it's different, either military dictators or somebody else, we have problems.
There is a lot happening in Bangladesh. There's one person who's been focused and has been looking at monitoring what's happening on the ground. Subir Bhaumik, senior journalist, former journalist of the BBC and Reuters, and an author of South Asia conflicts, who writes on a regular basis on Bangladesh, joins me in this exclusive conversation. Subir, thank you so much for joining us here on India Today Global. Let's begin with what's happening on the ground. We're looking at a toppling of a government, an elected government, an interim government. Has this interim government of Yunus overstayed its welcome?
Well, at the moment, the interim government headed by Professor Muhammad Yunus is running into a lot of trouble, a lot of problems with the Army Chief General Waqar-u-Zaman, who actually, after the ouster of PM Hassina's government, put in place this very interim government, and he justified it by the doctrine of necessity. He said there is no government in place, this is not how a country can run. But he was very clear on one particular point, that this government is an interim government. It has no real basis in the Bangladesh constitution. And therefore, this government is only supposed to be there to organize a free, fair, and inclusive election, and then make way for the elected government which will come after the elections are over. But in the last 9 months, General Waqar has noticed that Professor Yunus is in no hurry to organize any election. In fact, he seems to have found one excuse after another to not have elections immediately. Initially, he said, oh, we need widespread reforms, we need comprehensive reforms to fix Bangladesh, which has fallen prey to so many different disasters, according to him. Yeah, political disaster, economic disasters, whatnot. Then he said, well, the country's economy is not in real good shape, so we need to fix that. And then finally, though he's in charge, his people have been saying that law and order of the country is not conducive to holding an immediate elections. Now, law and order is the headache of this very government which is running the show. So even at the cost of, criticizing its own performance in maintaining law and order, he is going to the extent of saying there can't be any elections now. My own understanding of the situation is Professor Yunus has no political base. He's been an economist of some kind, microcredit guru, whatever you call him. But he knows for a fact that if there are elections, he is out. So his king-size political ambition and his ability to organize a political party does not really match. So he's trying to stay on as long as possible, right, without holding election, which is what General Waqar does not want. He has made very clear his point that he wants early elections, and then he wants the army to return to the barracks. He does not want to interfere in politics. He does not want to take over the government, but he wants early elections and inclusive election. Now, that inclusive election is not going to be possible because of the ban imposed on the Awami League now. How can you throw out the most important political party of the country and then say, oh, we are holding elections and inclusive elections? So, these are some of the reasons why this clash is building up. But there are other factors as well which we can discuss.
Right, and we will be discussing that. You've written a fascinating piece about the army also being a divided house. But before that, what is this buzz about an emergency that could be called in Bangladesh?
Well, there is, of course, an immediate need for an elected government there, and there's no doubt about it. The students and the youth, backed by the radical elements who brought down Sheikh Hasina's government, are now in no mood for election. They are saying they're going to go ahead with the July declaration, which is they're going to embody the spirit of the revolution, as if this is some kind of a Iran type Islamic revolution that has taken place, because they have not made they have made it fairly clear that they want a polity which will be based on Islamic Sharia laws and stuff like that. But more importantly, they are going to undo the 1972 secular constitution of Bangladesh. They have made it absolutely clear that this constitution, which was brought into being by Sheikh Mujibur Rahman and his party, the Awami League, is, according to them, a fascist constitution which perpetuates a fascist political order. And therefore, they are going to do away with this constitution. Now, the point here is, Geeta, that if this constitution does not exist, then President Shahabuddin Chuppu goes out of the window. He falls, he will be taken down. If he is taken down, he's the Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces. Whoever is put in his place as the president by this July declaration will actually remove General Walker and these other chiefs and other important people in the positions in army, which so far is the only institution relatively less affected by the sweeping change or changes brought about by this new dispensation in civil administration everywhere, actually, judiciary, except the army, which has been untouched. General Walker has made sure that does not happen. There's another very important factor, which is adding to this, problem between Yunus and General Walker, which is, in 2009 February, there was this huge mutiny in the Bangladesh Rifles, the border guard force, and a lot of army officers, 57 to be precise, they were killed. 20 of their wives were killed very brutally. And, more than 400 of these border guards have been found guilty of mass murder. They were sentenced to different, terms of prison sentences. This government has started releasing them on bail, which has upset the army terribly because their officers were killed. Now, there have been all kinds of theory. People have even blamed Sheikh Hasina for that. Why should Sheikh Hasina actually instigate a rebellion which will unsettle her own government? But, Bangladesh is rumors galore. There's a field day for rumors, so anything goes. But the point here is that the army says whoever might have instigated these people, it's these border guards who actually went and killed their officers. So they are accused of insubordination, assault on senior officers, and murder. Therefore, they have to remain in jail. They have to serve the prison sentences. This government has suddenly started releasing them because demands have been made by extremist Islamist groups like the Hizb ut-Tahrir that these people are innocent. So this is something, there's a considerable amount of heartburn in the army because their officers were killed, and now people who killed them are let off. And some of these people are actually, demonstrating in Dhaka in different places, asking for waiving of the prison sentence of various different, these military people who have been found guilty of indiscipline, murder, and stuff like that. And they said, this is not how a military can hold its own fort. It's a disciplined force. The last point I will make is very important, is that a lot of extremist elements, like Jashimuddin Rahmani, the Amir, meaning the chief of Ansarullah Bangla team, accused of murder, convicted of murder, they've all been released by the Yunus government, because the Yunus government, his main support comes from the Islamic radical groups like Jamaat-e-Islami, Hizbul Hifazat-e-Islam, Charmanai Pir, Bangladeshi Islami Andolan, and such other groups. None of the two major political parties of Bangladesh, Awami League and BNP, they want early elections. They have nothing to do with Yunus. They are pushing him for early elections. And of course, the other leftist parties, they think Yunus is doing Bangladesh a great disfavor by trying to open this Rakhine corridor, on the demands of the US, because they think this is going to drag Bangladesh into the festering Myanmar civil war. So, there are these issues which are at stake. And because of the stance taken by Yunus, a lot of people think he's sacrificing Bangladesh's interest just to please a lot of foreign powers like the US to stay in power.
Right.
And that's what the hitch is.
Right, Subir, we will, again, there's so much that you've just unpacked for us, but let's begin with the army. Chinks in the armor, you see a divided house when it comes to the army also. Explain to us what's really happening within and what's the interference in military that Yunus is being accused of, which is really making Waqar uncomfortable, General Waqar uncomfortable.
No, General Waqar is very clear about one point. We've spoken to him at different points of time, and he says that I am not interested in a military takeover because those military generals who took power directly in Bangladesh ended up in a very sorry state of affairs. General Zia was killed. General Ershad was thrown out of power by popular agitation in great disgrace. And even General Moinu Ahmed, who backed a caretaker government in 2007-8, had to go out in considerable disgrace. He can't stay in the country. He's gone away to the US. So he is very clear that I am interested in maintaining law and order and getting an elections done. Then my soldiers go back to the barrack. But if these people are not interested in an election, and if they are taking decisions which no interim government, which has no legal basis, can take, like giving away a corridor to a foreign power, or to the United Nations, or going in for wide-ranging reforms, because reforms are the business of an elected parliament. I mean, they are supposed to debate it. There is no debate here. And most importantly, Yunus has created several of these commissions, and he's saying he's terribly interested in reforms. Now, the Women Reforms Commission, led by Shirin Parveen Haq, one of the well-known feminist leading women's rights activists. Now, because she came up with this report, and that report was quite revolutionary considering the social conditions in Bangladesh. She said there should be gender equality in family law, in things like, divorce, inheritance, even sex trade has to be legalized. Women should have 300 reserve seats in parliament in addition to the 300 general seats already there. Moment the fundamentalists, the Islamic radicals, created a hue and cry over this, this report of the Shirin Haq Commission, Yunus has quietly given it a burial. He has diverted attention of the country by banning the Awami League and creating a political debate of sorts. So he's not serious about reforms. If he's serious about reforms, here is a report that has been given, the first conclusive report by any of these many commissions he has set up. Secondly, most of these people who are heading these commissions are actually foreign nationals. They're not even Bangladesh citizens. Like the Constitution Reforms Commission is headed by Professor Ali Riaz, who at some point of time was my colleague in BBC. He's an Illinois professor. He's a US citizen. He's not Bangladeshi. And one of the major problems that he's having with Waqar is, he has appointed Khalilur Rahman as the national security advisor. Now, Waqar's point is, A, he's a foreign citizen, can't be appointed in a sensitive place like national security advisor. B, you are an interim government. You can't be making such important appointments. You can't be removing army chiefs who so you can't be appointing national security advisor. So these are the many points that basically the trouble is Yunus and his interim government have no basis in law. There is no constitutional provision, but he is trying to do 50 different things, which is normally should be done by an elected parliament. So that's the problem.
Right. Subir, also, coup versus replacing the army chief. What's really happening over here? Are we looking at Lieutenant General Hassan playing his cards very close to Yunus, also engaging the Americans? Sorry?
That's precisely the point. So you know why Waqar got very disturbed when he found that this PSO, Principal Staff Officer, Armed Forces Division, the PMO, now there is no PMO because there is no PM at the moment. So this chap, General Hassan, Kamrul Hassan, has been going on all kinds of important trips abroad. He's gone to Pakistan on a very important trip, met with the Pakistani senior generals just before the Pakistanis, and we got into a problem. But more importantly, he goes and
That's
meets the
interesting.
American charge d'affaires without clearance from the army headquarters. Now, this actually gave Waqar the impression that this gentleman is lobbying with the Americans, who are very powerful at the moment in Bangladesh, to become the army chief, and with the backing of Mr. Yunus. Now, Mr. Yunus first created the National Security Advisor's position and appointed Khalilur Rahman so that he can balance out General Waqar. And then he's trying to actually remove the army chief himself. Couldn't be doing it easily because the president is still not interested in that. President, of course, as you know, was appointed, is Sheikh Hasina's person. But this is where Waqar feels that unless he moves now and does something to stop Yunus, he's gone. And therefore, it's an existential crisis for the army chief, who actually brought Yunus, who actually put in place this interim government.
But,
So now he's having to watch his back pretty seriously.
But what happens over here again? The dynamics. If you could explain to us, because if this was Biden administration, one could have understood how the army is trying to move, or Yunus is trying to move to get his man at the helm of affairs when it comes to the military. But this is Trump administration. Trump had actually hailed Sheikh Hasina. How is the US looking at Awami League being banned? There were actually reports about a possibility of Sheikh Hasina's return. In such a scenario, Lieutenant General Hassan engaging the Americans, does it really work? Will it play out well for them, or are we looking at Trump keeping a very keen eye on Bangladesh, making it an investment, potential investment hub for America, but also keeping in mind that Sheikh Hasina and the Awami League have to be there for the stability of the region, as also for better ties with America?
Well, the Americans and the Indians actually have a considerable difference on their idea of regional stability. We in India, regardless of political parties, Congress, BJP, Modi, Rahul Gandhi, they see continuation of Hasina as important for regional stability and, of course, for India-Bangladesh relations. I don't think the Americans look at it like that. The Biden administration played a very major role in this regime change operation, which has now been passed off as a revolution of sorts. But Trump is not very different, because Trump is a businessman, he's very transactional, and Yunus is the right kind of person who could be making those kind of gestures, not Hasina, really. Hasina is certainly never going to agree to something like this Rakhine corridor. I mean, that's the reason why she actually fell out with the Americans, who wanted some kind of a base facility to actually go ahead with their project Myanmar, where they want to defeat the defeat
Chinese.
of the Burmese. No, they want the defeat of the Burmese military junta, and thereby block the Chinese and restrict their influence in Myanmar. Now, Sheikh Hasina's line is she had good relations with China, much as she had good relations with India. And she has a historical problem in the US because she thinks her father was killed in that coup, which was engineered by the Americans. So, all that factor put together, Sheikh Hasina is less than comfortable with the Americans. Well, Trump might have made a difference, because Trump knows one thing for a fact, that Professor Yunus was very close to Hillary Clinton, even funded the Clinton Foundation. But at the end of the day, Geeta, the American deep state, they have long-term interests. The Pentagon, the State Department. How do you look at this? They have not changed anybody. They're still not a full ambassador in Dhaka. There's the Shah's affairs, who has been part of this regime change operation, and who is still sort of, behaving like a very important power broker. So she's today going to Yunus, tomorrow she's going to Waqar, then she's meeting General Kamrul Hassan. So she's like somebody who is going around like a matchmaker or a deal maker of sorts. And deal making, well, Trump loves deal making, doesn't he? So Trump, and for Trump, Bangladesh is not so important as is Palestine, as is Ukraine, or as is this India-Pakistan problem. So Trump, I don't think is going to take a personal interest, in fixing things in Bangladesh the way we want to. And now we have a lot of problems. And Geeta, you will realize we are having problems with Trump on a wide variety of issues, especially this recent conflict we had with the Pakistanis. So I don't think Trump is going to come out and say, restore the old Hassina government, everything should be in place, there should be democracy back and stuff like that. I don't expect that to happen. I don't think of a big change in heart in the American establishment anytime soon as far as Bangladesh is concerned. And certainly, if that was the case, Awami League wouldn't be banned. Yunus must have actually sounded out the Americans before he did this. I mean, otherwise, he wouldn't dare do something like this. An interim government with no basis in law and constitution, suddenly going ahead and banning the most important political party in the history of Bangladesh. I mean, the party which led the country to freedom, the party which has ruled Bangladesh for half of its post-independence time, the party which still has the largest number of party members. You look at their social media profile, much widespread than anybody else. Yunus is nothing compared to that, politically speaking.
Subir, is it not being challenged? Is this banning not being challenged? And if it is, will there be any hope for Awami League to be back in the political scene?
Geeta, I would tell you something, and I'm a Nagartala boy. You know how close we are to the Bangladeshis, and we know them, inside out. I mean, Awami League, Sheikh Hasina included, looks to India. Sheikh Hasina herself told her at one point of time, the Americans didn't want our independence, neither did the Chinese. We still got our independence. Why? India. So if India is with me, I don't really care. That was her position which she was in power. Point here is pretty straightforward. They are looking to India. They are looking to India for everything. They are looking to India to actually put Yunus in his place. They are looking to India to actually bring Trump round to, the scheme of things that we have been talking about, restoration of democracy, the elected government back in power and stuff like that. But I think Awami League on its own, at the grassroots level, they still have a lot of people. But you have to admit that most of their leadership, and I know it for a fact, are out of the country. They've run away, fearing persecution. Those who could not run away have been booked in hundreds of cases. In actresses who have played the role of Sheikh Hasina in a film is booked for murder. Absolutely. What kind of judiciary and what kind of justice can you expect in that country? Yeah, some of my dear sisters, journalists, politicians like Tarana Halim, Novanita Chaudhary, they have been booked in murder cases. They can't kill a fly. I bet on that. But they have been booked for murder. So, and this is the kind of rule of law that Mr. Yunus, the darling of the West, is giving Bangladesh today. He's supposed to have got Nobel Prize in Peace. I don't know what kind of peacemaking he has done anywhere in the world. He did not get the Nobel Prize for economics, by the way, like Amartya Sen did. He got it for peace. I don't really know what kind of peace he has made anywhere in the world. But he has created enough to disturb the peace in Bangladesh. And if the Awami League has to make a comeback, they need a level playing field now. I'm fairly sure if Awami League, the ban is lifted, if there are free and fair elections in Bangladesh now, the Awami League will do quite well. For the very simple reason, because of the crisis, the chaos and anarchy prevailing in Bangladesh, already the word is out among common people, a lot of whom I am in touch with on a day-to-day basis, very common people. They are saying, "Agei bhalo chilam. Hum pehle hi theek thak the. We were better before." This thing is catching up. Secondly, don't you ever forget, the Awami League might have been accused of many things, including rigging of elections and stuff like that. But the Awami League, nobody has a bigger mass organizations than the Awami League. They're still strong. If they can field the right kind of candidates, and provide the right kind of leadership, they're still likely to do very well in an election which is free and fair.
Okay,
Now,
Subir,
but then,
you followed the geopolitics. The geopolitics of India right now is not placed where you can actually go ahead and support Sheikh Hasina. We are battling Pakistan and trying to engage America and get the West on India's side. In such a scenario, what's your reading and assessment on what happens to Sheikh Hasina, who's actually in
well,
India?
you're right, actually, in bringing up this whole geopolitical factor and the problems that India is facing. Now, India has a problem in the West, a major problem. I don't have to elaborate it, but we had this fracas with Pakistan where missiles flew on, from both sides. Whoever brought about the ceasefire or however it happened, I'm not getting into that. But, the tensions are still there. And India really has to watch out in the West. But India also has to watch out in the East, because in the East, you have a less than friendly government now. You really don't know what the Chinese are up to. And the Pakistanis are ever more active in Bangladesh than ever before in the last 15 years. The ISI operatives are active. I know that for a fact. The fundamentalists who are close to the ISI, they are active. People like Jashimuddin Rahmani have been let off. And their people have entered Murshidabad to create trouble during the walk of, agitation. So the East is also in a bit of a ferment. And if India does not sort out the East in a way that suits its security interests, we have trouble ahead. But the problem here is that a lot of Bangladeshis, especially the Awami League types, keep telling me that the Americans have deliberately created this problem. I don't buy that. But, their feeling is that with the trouble in the West, the Indian focus is predominantly shifted that side. And we are left in the lurch. Otherwise, India would have taken more interest in sorting out the East, and that would be good for the Awami League. But that's not the case at the moment. The Indian attention is not undivided, it's divided. And it's more towards the West for reasons well understood. Therefore, but the problem is India has an Eastern problem as much as a Western problem. And of course, the Northern problem, which I don't have to elaborate, across the Himalayas. So India has problems on three sides, definitely on two sides. And that's not good for our friends in Bangladesh, who would have imagined that if India could give undivided attention towards the East, things would have worked out better for them and for India as well.
Final question, Subir Bhaumik. Is Bangladesh headed to further instability, which could lead to more instability in the region as well?
Geeta, I'll tell you, one of my military friends in Bangladesh who fought in the 71 war always keeps saying, Pakistan may have a nuclear weapon, but you guys, meaning India, still have a lot of options to play and put Pakistan under pressure, because Pakistan is certainly not an homogeneous country. Islam has failed to hold Pakistan together in the past and is still failing to do so. But in Bangladesh, it's a very homogeneous country. And he says this with a lot of emphasis, that if Bangladesh remains a liberal Bengali country, it's good for India. If it becomes a hardline Muslim country, it's dangerous for India. Because at the end of the day, more than 90% of the population, mother tongue, Bengali, religion, Islam. There is very little heterogeneity here, and therefore very little card that India can play. So therefore, it's liberal. If Bangladesh is run on the principles of 71, the ideals of 71, liberal Bengali nationalism, friendship towards India, friendship towards Bengali brethren in India, works well for India, works well for people in Bangladesh. But if Bangladesh becomes a Bengali Pakistan, you know what I'm meaning, then it's real big trouble, because A, you have trouble in both the flanks, B, here you have an homogeneous population. Maybe they don't have a nuclear bomb, but they can be trouble of a different kind. If this
We've seen that. There's an entire era where we saw trouble with Bangladesh and insurgency.
That's the reason why Mrs Gandhi went into Bangladesh. India is by and large a defensive state in much of its post-colonial history, but The military intervention that Mrs. Gandhi resorted to in Bangladesh was not because she fell in love with the Bengalis. She did it for Indian security interests. She
Absolutely.
wanted to break up Pakistan, and she wanted a friendly nation in the East, which she thought would happen if people like Sheikh Mujibur Rahman were running the show. But then within 4 years of the independence, things happened differently, and we know the rest is history. So since then, you would have noticed that the India-Bangladesh relation much depends on the regime which is in power there. If we
Absolutely.
have Awami League, we have a friendly regime, things go hunky-dory. If it's different, either military dictators or somebody else, we have problems.
Yes, absolutely. Subir Bhaumik, thank you so much for this insightful conversation. And to our viewers here at India Today Global, watch the entire interview and our shows on Bangladesh where Subir Bhaumik would be featuring. Thank you so much, Subir, for joining us.
Thank you.